Hello everyone, welcome to part 2 of episode 2 of the Shed NV podcast, and we are joined by none other than, I was going to say the most experienced player in the team and the squad, Darren King. Welcome.
Thanks very much. Glad to be here.
To try to hold back there.
Last time we had you was over Zoom as well, wasn't it? It kept glitching. It was like, so we'll have to get him on properly.
Yeah, that's 4K Wi-Fi for you. I mean, I suppose we're speaking to you on the Tuesday night after the Friday that was, after your winning goal against Ards. Give us your perspective of that winning goal when you smashed the ball in from about 4 yards out. It was further than that, it was at least 6.
Yeah. Look, it's always nice to score a winning goal in a game. You know, luckily I was in the right place at the right time on Friday night, but at the end of the day, the main thing was getting the win in the top of the table.
We don't do cliches. Cliches in this podcast.
We'll talk you through it.
Talk us through it from start to finish. That's what I mean. What you were telling us all for an hour before we start recording. Don't be shy.
But Gareth said it was 6 yards. I thought it was about 30 yards you hit that from, wasn't it?
Yeah, well actually my brother-in-law texted me when I got home and he said, well, what happened? He says, did it hit off you and go into the net? And I says, actually it was an overhead kick into the top bin from 40 yards, but
so the truth is somewhere in between. I suppose the timing of it and so quickly after it equalised as well. I mean, you could see, you always, anytime you score, and you do score your fair share, you can see the celebration the boys would score, but there was a sort of different celebration with everybody. It's the importance of the goal, probably.
Yeah, I think so. It's there was a huge disappointment going 1-0 down the other night. Now, obviously, we didn't drop our heads and we didn't, get dragged down any further or whatever. We sorted out our shape and we sorted it out and came back at them and got the win. But yeah, it was just a sense of relief. When Mark Kelly came on and got the first goal, it was just, you heard it in the stand, it was just elation. And then obviously we had a chance. What was the 73rd, 75th minute, whatever it was. And I always fancy myself to get on the end of it when I get into the box. If you don't,
I can cut that there. I always fancy myself.
And what I mean, if there's no point going up there if you don't think you're going to get on the end of something, And me and Dee McCorry have an ongoing thing, cover the back post, whatever it was. You heard him shouting at me the other night, and just took a chance the other night, just dropped off. And luckily enough, the ball dropped, and I found myself in a bit of space, waiting for the ball to come down. And when I caught it, just caught it sweet. It was one of those ones.
Do you have time to sort of? And that's probably a stupid question, but we're, obviously neither of us, are footballers. Well, at one point it might have been but in comparison to you're not playing at this level. But what goes through your mind or somebody's mind when they're in that position? As you said, we talked off our, we were waiting for the ball to drop. It seemed like it took an age just for it to sit perfectly for you. A lot of players would have snatched at it, we get stuck over the bar or gone back across goal. Do you have a thought process, or do you have time to think, or is it pure instinct?
Well, I mean, it's one of those ones that could go anywhere. It could have ended up in the canal, if you snap at it or whatever.
Gareth been going mad.
I would have been fined and everything for it. But no, it's one of those ones. The other night I seen I had a bit of time because the other players were closing me, and I just waited, and as I said, lucky enough, I seen that end of the goal was blocked off, and this end was open, so I had to sort of position my body to try and catch and put it in that side, and luckily enough it went in.
See, just the other night, I know it was kind of controversial, the first goal, because we had a penalty shout just right down in the goal here at the Canal Court end.
The shed end.
The shed end, yeah, the shed end. Well, that's the name of the podcast, isn't it?
Make sure to leave that one in.
Yeah, there we go. First question, I messed it up. But yeah, so we conceded. We should have had a penalty down here. They went down. We conceded straight away, basically on their counter attack. When there's a bit of an injustice on the pitch, how do you keep the calm and keep the shape and keep the boys focused and kind of not get carried away with the anger that I suppose that the fans were feeling at the time?
Yeah, well, I mean, when you look at the highlights back, it was a clear cut penalty. I think his arm was up like that, and you can actually in the highlights you can see Dingo saying to the ref, he had his arm up like that and he's just waving him on, but as you said, then they just broke straight up. But in a football match, you have to just quickly forget about things like that, because a referee, you know what they're like. They're not going to change their mind if they've made a decision. It's very rarely, unless they introduce VAR into the game here, which isn't going to happen anytime soon. So you have to just forget it and move on. But you said, you could become frustrated with it, and the anger could take over you, and you start lunging into tackles, whatever it may be. But you can't let that happen.
Yeah, that's what you said, wasn't it? It was like the one big difference that we've seen in the squad was the maturity in that performance, and actually still playing our football and playing the way that we wanted to play, and not kind of getting dragged into that, the hard tackles or the long balls. We really focused on our game, and the second half changed everything, didn't it?
Yeah, well, Ards are always a physical side. They always come out like that there, they're sort of old school, so to speak, back to front and hacking you down if you get past them, that sort of thing, which they done the other night. I think by the end of the match, the referee had no energy left in his arm for holding yellow cards up.
Well, it took him long enough to get them out.
I know that, yeah. But and that was just a sign of how the game was going. But we tried, as you say, play our game, and we knew it's one of those things. You match work rate, and the old cliches again. Match work rate. You keep up with the pace, you keep a high intensity, and then quality always sort of comes through in the end, or at least you hope so.
One of the things that probably Darren's talked about, over the course of the season, and I know only 6 games in and only 5 league games in, as we're talking about, the level of experience that there is within the squad. And obviously we've a great crop of young lads as well, but the level of experience we have, you don't let standards drop, and you don't let things like that, and maybe some of the tackles that have gone in, that went in Friday night sort of get to you and annoy you, whereas in the past we might either reacted or responded badly to that in terms of try to do the same back, or sort of wilted and stepped off, and that doesn't seem to be a facet. This team seems to be a bit more sort of experienced up there. Is that what you found? I mean, I know you're one of the senior players, in terms of obviously age, but in terms of you're in the senior players group and the rest of it. Yeah. Is that something you've noticed within this current crop? Yeah,
well, I mean, just talking about the current squad, I know we spoke off camera a few times, and we've got 2 quality players for every position on the pitch. In some places we've got 3. I mean, it's a long time since you've had that. You look at the quality that we've brought in. They'd walk into any Irish League team. And going into the game, as you say there, lunging in their tackles and getting hacked down and things like that there, yeah, you can. But if we hadn't been going into that game after losing 2 games, it might have been a different story. Success breeds success and breeds positivity and whatever it may be. And if you're going into the game, you have 4 wins out of 4. You're capable of winning that game. So therefore, you don't get frustrated and you don't overreact like you would if you were maybe frustrated from losing 2 or 3 going into it.
So is that going to be the test then? I mean, because as much as we'd love to sit here and say we're going to go unbeaten all season, it would take an unbelievable, monumental effort for that to happen. It's not to say it's beyond the realms of possibility, but if and when the time comes where we lose a game, or we maybe lose a couple of poor performances, and we're coming into the next big game, and maybe so we have that type of match like I had on Friday night. Is that the biggest test then for the squad, where how do you respond to adversity type of thing? Yeah,
I suppose it is. Every team's going to go through a dry patch for goals and go through a sticky patch for results or whatever it may be. You'd be very naive to think that you're going to go through the whole season unbeaten. However, the quality's in the squad to go through the season unbeaten if everybody performed at 100%.
According to him 2 weeks ago, we're going to walk it.
Well, it's one of those leagues. I don't think anybody's ever walked it. So it's going to be a battle every week, and as we keep saying, every game's as important as the last, and it's just about going out and winning that. But as you say, it's going to be a test. If you do go through a bit of a sticky patch or a dry patch for goals, whatever it may be, that how you react to that and get yourself back to where we are now.
Yeah, a thing that we've talked about as well has been the adaptability this season, and being able to approach the game and whatever it requires, finding enough to win each time. And it's probably something that we've been lacking over the past few years. When you said the qualities is that really what's driving everybody on? Everybody wants to perform to the best, to make sure they don't lose that place for the next week. Yeah,
well, I mean, everybody's afraid of their life of losing their place in the team, and the minute you stop thinking like that, that's obviously when complacency sets in. So if somebody's out injured or somebody misses for a certain reason, it could be 3-4 weeks before you get your spot back, if you even get it back, depending on what it is, because once someone gets in there, they're not going to lose. They don't want to lose their spot.
Like poor Sammy got married, and that's him.
That's it. That's just him, just in general. Like, because he get married, he's something with football.
Might never see him again.
He's not letting out of the house.
No, but this is it. But it's a good problem, for everybody. It keeps you on your toes. There's nothing worse than a team that of maybe 9, 10, 11 players who rock up every week and know they're going to play and know, regardless of what they do, they're going to be in the team next week. that's no way to be training, and no way to be sort of going week by week. You know, you want to know that there's somebody there, you know, pushing you on, and even in competition or in training, you can see there's more competition, there's a bit more intensity. You know, everybody's sort of trying to impress, not just the manager, but, you know, each other. Nobody wants to let anybody else down on the team, you know. And then, flip side of that, if you come into the team, you want to play as well as the people who have been in the team before you. You know, it's not a case of, you know, you're just going in to try and keep. You're trying to help your players, your teammates out, and try to perform for the team.
So, sorry, being a senior player, and for those players who maybe aren't breaking into the squad at the minute, how do you keep those guys motivated, and how do you keep them kind of switched on? Like, because we're going to need everybody at some point this season.
Yeah.
So how do they still feel like, you know, they're going to have a place?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's exactly what you've said there. We're going to, you know, it's a long season. It's a tough physical league. You know, it's very demanding, especially when it gets closer to Christmas time and you're playing Tuesday and Saturday, and there's cup games thrown in with it as well. You know, you'll find your squad will be stretched, and as you say there, we're going to need everybody. So it's just keep, you know, reinforcing that. Players, you know, there's how many young players do you see coming through at 16, 17, 18 who play in the team every week? You don't see it. So, you know, they're not naive in that sense. You know, they watch Premiership games and they see young players, you know, have to sort of, you know, be sort of bled into the system, whatever it may be. And, you know, the quality of the young guys coming through is scary. You know, it really is. It's phenomenal what we've got at our disposal there.
From your perspective, I mean, you've obviously been at this club since, you know, been playing for the first team since what, you're probably 17, is that right?
Yeah,
17,
18,
and you're 36 in October, as you reminded me.
36 in October, not 36 yet.
It's alright. I'm not 40 yet, but I'm 40 in October. So you're looking considerably better than me, and you're only a few years on me. But anyway, that's another story. I mean, you've obviously you had a brief spell obviously away at Warren Point whenever, you know, the club here sort of went out of existence before we were reformed. But, you know, you spent, aside from that, you spent your entire career here, and you've seen a lot of young players come and go, and we've had a lot of unbelievable players who've gone through this club, and some have made a massive impact, some have been, you know, have been disappointed in terms of the impact we thought they were going to make and they didn't. Is this, you might want to get too carried away, but the likes of, you know, obviously John McGovern coming in, James Thielen coming in, those two that sort of stand out. Obviously Brian Healy's only 16. We know who's, you know, loved around this club. Is it as good a sort of crop of, is it a hungry maybe as crop of youngsters as we've had that you can recall?
Definitely. You know what I'm saying is it's a long time since there's been so many youngsters into one group coming through at one time. You've always maybe had one or two, you know what I mean? But, you know, even Ray Byrne would say to me regularly, he said, you know, it's a long time. You know, even he always recalls, he said when myself and Richard Clark and stuff were coming through when we were younger, he says it's a long time since you had, you know, people with that sort of hunger and desire coming through. And the thing about, you know, the young guys coming through now, there's a will to win there. There's a want to win right across the whole squad. You know, I'm not saying the guys in the past didn't want to win, or, you know, even the previous season, whatever it may be, but there's just something different there, even in training. You know you've got a lot of guys there who just have a hunger and desire and a will to win. You know, and that's a huge thing for any team.
From your perspective, I mean, and it's not to keep sort of referencing, you know, your experience, but, you know, you obviously, we're talking there, like, you're going from Brian Healy, who's 16, 17, you're coming 17, you're coming 36, you know, two opposite ends of your career. What keeps you motivated? I mean, they've always been the same Darren King, from what I can remember, as, you know, you're 17, you know, breaking into the first team, and the same desire and the same professionalism is, you know, the key word that I'd probably use to describe it. But what is it that keeps you motivated at this stage to perform at a high level, and to still, I mean, you can see in the celebrations from the other night how much it means to you. Yeah. What is it? What's your sort of your go-to that you focus?
Well, I mean, like, as you say there, like, I've been on the go a long time. With regard to Irish League and Championship or whatever it may be, but, you know, I've said to you in previous interviews, football pretty much is my social life. You know what I mean? And it's, you know, it's what I want to do. I have no interest in going out drinking. I have no interest in anything else really outside of my family, work, and football. You know what I mean? So that's pretty much this is my training, this is my social life, you know what I mean, this is just what I have in terms of, you know, my outlet when I come out of the house. And that's one of the things that keeps me going. When I was younger, I always made a promise to myself that I would try, and my dad said to me as well, that I would try and play at as high a level as I possibly could for as long as I possibly could, and that sort of stuck with me. And you know yourself, and like, let's be honest, I was never going to make it across the water or whatever. You know, you have to know your limitations and play within your own ability.
Will you pause now for a second? Go, no.
No, don't worry. Nobody will ever say that to me.
It is transfer deadline day as well. So
Hold on a second. What time are you on?
No, but look, I'm saying, look.
Hold on a second. That's not how you.
You know, in this league, and in the Premiership, even in Northern Ireland, yes, there's some outstanding players and there's a lot of qualities come through and moved on, whatever. But you know, as long as you keep yourself physically fit, you know, and motivated, and you have a will and a desire to win, that's half the battle. You know what I mean? And then that sort of keeps you going and keeps you motivated. You know, but you know, as I said, the young lads coming through, they have that. You look at Noel Healy. You know, in training, he's lifting boys in tackles like he's lifting them in games. You know, that doesn't just happen in games, and that breeds through. You know, if they're doing that there in training, they'll take it right through in the games.
Train as you play.
Train as you play. Yeah. And
you know, you're saying there though about playing at the highest level that you can. So how important is it at this stage of your career to get back to the Premiership and give that one more go with Newry, especially the club that you started with?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's always a goal. You know, you say there, especially the club that you started with. You know, you talk there about me being at Warren Point for a few years, you know, and I've always said this to everybody, I would never have been at Warren Point only for what happened with Newry, you know, and even at that, I never had any desire. I've had offers in the past when I was younger in my career and right through till maybe I was 28, 29, 30 to go and play for other clubs, but I always liked to keep it local. For me, you know, I remember actually reading an interview that Joey Cunningham done recently, and he said in it that playing for a team was about the people rather than success or trophies. And for me, it was a little bit like that. You know, I like the local feel. You know, obviously growing up with a GAA background, you know, you come down to Newry, there's a local feel to it. There's a community club. Yeah, it's you know, you're coming through the gate and you're seeing, you know, husband and wife painting the front of the ground. You know, you're seeing the likes of Ernie or whatever as well painting the ground. You see, you know, Mihal and Marty and all out fixing the goals out the back. You know, you can't buy that there. You know, that sort of way. And for me, that's what sort of, you know, drives me on as well. Went to Warren Point for a while. You know, loved my time at Warren Point. But it was always wanting to come back to Newry. You know, if you ever got an opportunity, Newry feels like a football club. You walk out and you've got the stand, and you know what I mean, and everything that goes along with it. You know, and we're very aware, even as players, you know, what the supporters do. You know, for us on a daily basis. You know, funny, me and Dingo were coming out down at Dergview after half time a couple of weeks ago there, or just last week, and I looked across and I says, look at that there, look at the effort that takes. And he says, what? And I said, about 15 Newry flags all hung up. You know what I mean? Like the time and effort. Like, so that's guys who get on a bus, you know, spend their hard-earned cash, buy a carry-out, whatever it is, pay in the ground with the hard-earned cash.
No, obviously, you know, not to drink in the bus.
You know, no, obviously. And, you know, they go early to get off, to hang their flags up. You're all there, you do it too, you know, and you know, that takes time and effort. And that, in a part, you know, when we talk about us as a club, we're not talking about the first team. We're talking about everything that goes along with it. You're talking about the supporters. And that, if that doesn't drive you on, for me, it drives me on as a player. And I think, you know, there's a lot of guys now buying into that as well. You know,
I think that's good, because I think from a fan's point of view as well, like, you know, when you go to the grounds, I only really look out for new results. I don't care what else happens elsewhere, and all the fans are the same. You know, they might support teams in England, but for us, it's that Saturday kind of dictates your week, whether or not you're going to go home and have a good weekend, or if you're going to be grumpy going out for food that night with the woman, or, you know, that, because that's what happens naturally, you know. So I think for us, it's like when we see the fans, particularly when you're celebrating and you're right over with us, you just feel like it's, you know, it is one club and you're together. That's important to think, and that kind of breeds what we have at the minute, this excitement and this kind of momentum that we were building. Yeah,
and it's much nicer to be doing player ratings and writing match reports whenever we've won games and things like that. You know, whenever we've lost games.
Sure.
It's the hardest thing in the world when you're trying to go, oh, well, you know, I'll go out for a pint with most of these boys, and then you're giving somebody a 5. You know what I mean? It's like you get the stick.
How controversial is that in the changing room, by the way? These player ratings.
Yeah. You get people who aren't happy, and you get people who are, you know, pleasantly surprised.
I'll ask you for who the names are. I mean, looking at just before we sort of wrap up, I mean, we've obviously looked at your career, and you, as Ali touched on there, how important is to get back to the Premiership, and that's obviously everybody's ultimate goal, and it's been openly talked about, you know, this season with the players are brought in, and obviously the start of the season has only heightened that, where, you know, the goal is to go and, you know, ideally win the title, but certainly to get promoted and get back to the Premiership. I mean, looking at the remainder of the season, I suppose most pressingly the Queen's game this weekend. You know, it's the absolute epitome of guarding against complacency, isn't it? You know, you've 5 games, you've gone and beaten what are essentially your nearest rivals in Ards, and beaten them in, you know, in fun fashion, if you like. You know, coming behind from big crowd. How important is it to make sure we don't cock it up, if you like, against Queens?
Oh yeah, it's, you know, it's vitally important. You look at Institute and Lockall on Saturday. Yeah. You know, so does, you know, Institute have lost games by, you know, big margins, you know, up until now, and people were looking at them saying, you know, they're whipping boys of the league or whatever it is, but it's not the case. That just goes to show you, you know, on any given day or any week, you know, bottom team can beat a team up in the top 3-4, you know, so you can't, as you say, you can't let complacency set in. You know, you just have to keep that motivation levels high, intensity levels high, work rate high, and just keep doing what we've been doing, and hopefully that's enough. You know, you could get there on Saturday and it just mightn't be our day. Yeah. But as long as you keep a high level of work rate and you stay motivated throughout, well, at least you have a good chance.
And I mean, and I suppose just lastly, looking towards the remainder of the season, and I know we asked Dingo a couple of weeks ago, and he says, you know, what's your prediction for the season? And thinking he would probably sit in the fence, he goes, I'm here to win the title. He looked at it.
So we're not going to get relegated.
Yeah, well, he looked as if somebody just pissed in his chips, like, you know what I mean? So as if, hey, well, you know, you have 3 heads. I mean, Dingo's plenty of experience as well. You're long in the tooth in terms of you've been in this position before, and it's very, very early days in the season. Is it, you know, finding that balancing act between making sure that, you know, you know what you're capable of and still have the confidence that you can go and win the league, or certainly go and get promoted, but also sort of realising that it's certainly not a foregone conclusion. Is to find that balancing act without not doubting yourself, but not getting lagging.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, it's one thing having a squad that's capable of winning a league, and then it's another thing actually going and winning the league. Yeah. You know, so as you say there, the balancing act is important. You know, a good start in this league is always vitally important. You've seen it, you know, in the past 10-15 years, you know, a good start, which we've never really had, but still managed to get promoted, you know. But a good start, but it's just maintaining that going forward. You know, it would be very foolish for anybody, you know, and especially as a player or a manager, to sit and say, you know, we're going to win the league. You know, yes, we want to win the league, and that's the goal, but we have to make sure we work hard enough to do that, you know. Yeah,
there's so many variables throughout the season as well, isn't it? Like, so.
I think we can safely say that wraps up part 2 of episode 2. Our chief goal scorer, penalty winner, we didn't even get on to that. Winning the penalty against Hartlepool Whalers, disgusting tackle it was too, just for the record. But like Darren King, he's been a fantastic guest, and wish you all the best for the rest of the season. Thanks very much.
Cheers. Thanks very much.